Hi, this is Brent Grover speaking from Evergreen Consulting for advanced supply chain software powered by IBIS. This month's topic is called The Incredible Shrinking Margins. It's about a plan to rebuild your margins in your wholesale distribution business. And I ask you a question here about your pricing strategy, if you have one. Is your approach to justify higher margins because of your better service proposition that's superior to that of your competitors? Is your approach to have below average margins, lower margins, because you can't, your service level is below par and you can't really justify higher margins? Or possibly you don't have a pricing strategy at all. So let's talk about some tactics, some options you have, a review of what we talked about last week. One possibility, and tactically, is to use promotional pricing to get new customers or new pieces of business with the intention of fixing below par margins or pricing outliers later. Another tactical approach you might take is to just meet the competition, which is what many distributors do, and then they may or may not fix those margins at a later date. They may just rely on the sales compensation plan and hope that that plan works to generate an interest on the part of the salespeople in optimizing margins. Sometimes that backfires because most of those plans really just encourage salespeople to generate more volume. Another approach is to encourage the salespeople to sell above market, and that can cause a problem because when they get caught speeding, that is when their prices are found to be above market, customers may become angry and the salespeople have a problem. And the last tactical option I want to mention is the one, of course, that I would argue for, which is you sell at market prices based on the value received by the customer and not off of the cost of the product, so to speak. You have a much better chance of satisfying the customer and creating value for your shareholders as well. So I'll touch very lightly on the 2% promise. I mentioned it last time as well. There are lots of consultants out there who promise that they can raise your margins by 2% for your whole company, or at least for part of your business. I would say that anyone could raise margins by a couple of percent on at least some of your business at your company, not necessarily on the whole sales book, but the issues that you really want to focus on are sustainability and also damage control. You don't want to raise margins and then have them slide backwards. And the damage control issue is, of course, risking the loss of profitable business, which is what no one wants. But so this is really much more than an analytical exercise. It's a challenge in change management, behavior management, both for the sales force, which is typically on straight commission, and the management team, which is often not really interested in taking much in the way of risks, and they look at interfering with the way the salespeople do pricing as being risky. So I want to talk about 3 pricing opportunities, one at a time this month. This week's focus is on better pricing system design. And there is, to start with, there's a positive correlation, which we found on many, many projects, hundreds actually, a positive correlation between management control over pricing and the return on investment the company is able to generate. A simple rule of thumb here is that a 1% increase in gross margin percentage, what some people call 100 basis points, increases return on sales by almost 1%. When I say almost 1%, remember in most companies that a portion of the increase would be going to the salespeople in the form of commissions. But in turn, a 1% increase in return on sales increases return on investment by 8 to 10 percentage points. That's why I would argue that pricing optimization is the most powerful and the lowest risk change you could make in your business to increase return on investment percentage. I want to mention some specifics in terms of pricing system design. One question then is your price book, presuming you still have one. It may not be published. It may just be for internal use and may reside on the computer. It may have pricing brackets or column pricing. It's typically out of touch with the market. Most distributors have a defensive price book where the list prices are higher than most customers pay. Maybe there are very few, if any, customers who pay the list price for such and such a product. So it's out of touch with the market, and therefore the salespeople will use either product cost or a discount from the last bracket to quote customers. They won't actually use the price book for the purpose that it was originally intended. And what they really need is market-driven pricing matrices, which is going to be a subject of an entire video later this month. Another necessary ingredient for success with pricing optimization is a pricing coordinator. Someone at the company must be in charge of functions like inventory and credit and deliveries, but interestingly, many distributors do not have any one person in charge of pricing, so there's no accountability. Salespeople are in charge of their own pricing, and the sales managers are mostly technically responsible for keeping track of their sales force members that they're responsible for their pricing, but they actually, in most cases, really don't do that. And I also want to emphasize this is not a clerical position. It's a management position, and it's worthy of an entire chapter, if you will, on its own. But the pricing coordinator is a required ingredient for success. Before we leave today, I also want to mention the ERP system and its importance in pricing. Most ERP systems have a pretty good pricing module. Some of them have a really good pricing module, and that does make a difference because it adds more flexibility and more control. But frankly, if you have thousands of special pricing records out there, what that tells me is that the price book is really not being used, and what's going on is that people are doing a lot of rogue discounting. They are quoting below market prices to customers, and then these prices are memorialized in the special pricing records, which are often in need of management attention. They're allowed to become stale, and if they become obsolete, they can really become a drag on margins. So to wrap it up for this week, the pricing function in most distributors we work with, even really well-run companies, is undermanaged. Too much pricing authority is delegated to the sales force, but without the needed pricing information that they would require to do the job and not create even more pricing outliers. It's the biggest profit improvement area for most distributors, and it's also one of the least risky. So until next week, this is Brent Grover from Evergreen Consulting for Advanced Supply Chain Software, powered by IBIS.